There's a natural world out there. But we live in an unnatural world, one that we've made ourselves. How do we make it from the natural raw materials around us? Some raw materials, like stone, can be used straight from the ground. Wood needs to be shaped before it can be turned into things like furniture. Clay needs a bit more work than wood. First, it needs to be pushed into the right shape. And then it needs heat to turn it into useful pottery. Coal is a raw material. What do you think can be made from it? One useful thing is dye. What could you use this for? What raw material do you think plastic comes from? Many plastics are made from crude oil. Bauxite is the raw material for aluminium. But look how much energy it takes to make metal things like copper rivets. As well as the cost in energy, mining can make a mess of the earth. Looking at the earth from 12 kilometers up, you can see a town on the right. But this mess here is an iron mine. Can we go on digging things up like this, or are the resources of the earth limited? How do we use resources? And is there a danger that they'll get used up? Oil is pulled out of the earth by oil wells. These are often called nodding donkeys. What is oil used for? Oil and coal are non-renewable resources. If we want to go on using them, we have to go on digging them out of the earth. We can't go on doing that forever. We live on a spaceship. Spaceship Earth. The only raw materials we can use are the ones we carry around with us. And we can't get at the stuff in the middle. All our raw materials have to come from the thin crust on the surface of the Earth. If you had to live on onion skin, wouldn't you be rather careful about how quickly you used it up? What do you have to use up to make newspapers? First, trees have to be cut down, and you only get about 400 newspapers from each tree. Then a lot of energy is used to snip off the branches. trunks are turned into pulp, and the pulp is turned into paper. What else has to be used up before the paper comes through your door? Every day in this country alone, we make 22 million newspapers. How many trees does that take? And what happens to yesterday's newspapers? The average family throws away more than 4 kilograms of paper every week. Can we avoid so much waste? Is there anything useful we could do with this load of rubbish? And why do we throw so much stuff away? One reason we throw things away is rust. When cars get too rusty, they're no more use as cars. What causes rust, and how can you prevent it? After being dried, this pan is coated with a thin layer of oil, while another is just carefully dried. What do you think will happen after a few days in a polythene bag? And what will happen to a pan that's wet? Why do you think these scientists have chosen to keep them in polythene bags? These scientists are trying to find out what makes bicycle chains go rusty. After dividing it into short sections, they scrape the lacquer off one side of the chain with sandpaper. Why do you think this matters? And why do they scrape only one side? One section is left in salty water, one in acid water, and one in plain water. One section of chain is left dry. What's the cling film for? And what do you think will happen in a day or two? Which of the pans do you expect to be rusty? This one has been protected by its layer of oil. The dry one hasn't got rusty either. But what can you learn from this pan? The bicycle chain left in the plain water is a bit rusty, but salty water has done more damage. And acid water has caused terrible rust. But the dry chain hasn't got rusty at all. So what can we do to stop things getting rusty? And what other ways can you think of to make things last longer, to extend the use of our limited resources? Just because things have been thrown away doesn't mean they're worthless. One person's rubbish is another person's pay packet. It isn't only seagulls that make a living from leftovers. Can we save money and energy by recycling, by using materials again instead of always going back to the earth for raw materials? This is Australian bauxite, the raw material for aluminium. Before it can be turned into aluminium, it has to be dug out of the ground and transported to the chemical plant. When the raw material has been purified, it has to be transported again, and then electricity is used to turn it into molten aluminium metal. Lots of energy and money is needed to get from the bauxite to the finished product. What difference would it make if the aluminium were recycled? Used cans can be collected, along with milk bottle tops and other aluminium things. How does this save energy? No digging up of bauxite. No problems with purification. Hardly any transport costs. And very little electricity. All you need to do is grind it up or melt it down. Does it matter if the aluminium you get from recycling isn't as pure as the stuff from bauxite? Can you think of any other materials that could be recycled? This chap is a totter, a rag and bone man. He makes his living by recycling things like clothes. What do you think happens to old clothes? First, they have to be sorted. Clothes that are still usable are sent off to Africa for people who have none. The rest is sorted into different types of material. Mixed synthetics are chopped into small pieces and then pulled into fibres. They go through the camelback and a needle loom and are compressed into felt pads. What do you think these might be useful for? What could you do with cars that are too rusty to run? What you want to do is grab what's useful. The first thing you need to do is separate the different materials in the cars. This machine shreds the cars into small pieces and then sorts them out into steel, other metals and rubbish. So, if you were running this scrapyard, what would you want to do with the different piles of materials? What about the rubbish that goes into your dustbin? Do you really have to throw it all away? And what else could we use again? What kinds of things might we be able to recycle? And what good would it do?